These are the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king in Jerusalem, sayings gathered for instruction, for right living, for those who would know sound judgment and walk in the fear of the Lord. Hear now the summons. Be wise, accept correction, keep counsel, and choose the way that yields life. There are seasons when the road ahead is plain, and seasons when it is braided with deceit. This teaching is for the one who stands at the crossroads and must choose a lantern, the light of wisdom or the flicker of folly. I speak to you as one who cares for your steps, with the tenderness of a father, the frankness of a teacher, and the urgency of one who has seen ruin follow the careless. Before we begin, if this message will be a guide to your days, remain to the end. Share it with one who needs counsel, and if you find these truths helpful, subscribe and leave a sign that you were here, so others may also come and be strengthened. My son, listen to your father's instruction. Incline your ear to know prudence. Wealth of years is no shield against a single foolish choice. Consider first the cry of wisdom, calling from the street, standing at the city's gate. She lifts her voice where every passerby may hear. How long, O simple ones, will you love simplicity? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing, and fools hate knowledge? She cries out plainly, not for the learned alone, but for anyone willing to heed. Her words are a lamp at night and a faithful guide by day. Wisdom speaks. I was present when the foundations were set. I dwell with prudence, and I find delight in the company of those who fear the Lord. I spread a banquet of counsel. I set a table of understanding. Whoever takes hold of me will live in confidence and dwell in the refuge of the Most High. Hear me, therefore. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. To know the Holy One is to depart from wickedness. Short sayings. The fear of the Lord is the root of understanding. Fools despise instruction and prefer the easy path that leads to shame. The voice that flatters conceals the knife. Quick speech betrays the heart. Better a little with uprightness than great treasure gained by crooked measures. Diligence reaps bread, sloth brings want. Explain. The fear of the Lord is not mere dread of punishment, but reverent awe that shapes choices. Where that fear guides a household, discipline is not harshness, but training. Correction becomes the way to steadiness. When a man or woman learns to weigh words and hands with the measure of God's character, their life tends toward peace and blessing. Scene. At dawn, a father stoops in the courtyard to bind a son's sandal before he goes to the field. Dust rises in the narrow lane. The smell of barley and olive press hangs in the air. The father places his palm on the son's shoulder and says, "My child, set your heart on understanding. The field is wide, and thieves prowl at dusk. Guard your steps." The son, youth on his face and a question in his eyes, nods and goes out to his labor with quiet resolve. Application. Keep a daily discipline. Before work, ask which choice will honor God. Before speech, measure whether your words heal or harm. Let correction be welcomed as a sharpening, not resented as shame. Listen again to wisdom as she cries in the public place. Whoever sets his hand to dishonest gain digs a pit for his own feet. Flattery leads men astray. Promises made lightly often bind the speaker in loss. The righteous weigh their business by truth. The corrupt hope to prosper by sly weights and false balances. Short sayings. Honest scales and true measures bring favor. False weights bring wrath. Gain hastily taken dwindles. The prudent store for drought. A covenant kept is like rain to a thirsty field. A promise broken is like a well that leaks away. Explain. The marketplace and the house share the same test. Will you be faithful when no one watches? God values the inner rule of honesty. A community endures when neighbors trust each other's words. One dishonest gain may feed a household a season, but it destroys reputation and invites retribution. Scene: a merchant sits at his stall beside bundles of saffron and woven cloth. A traveler presses coins into his palm and offers a weight that seems light. The merchant remembers his father's voice and sets the extra coin back on the table. The traveler, surprised, returns a bowed head and leaves with a blessing rather than a curse. Application: practice one concrete act this week. Weigh what you give and what you receive. Let small honesties become habit. They will guard you in more serious trials. My son, keep your heart from the paths of the forbidden woman, and from the man whose speech glitters with false promises. When charm becomes a net and warmth becomes a snare, you are led away from the bed of peace into nights of shame. The seductress speaks smooth words while her end is ruin. She plunders those who trust her. Short sayings: the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, yet her end is bitter as wormwood. He who walks near her house goes into a net and loses his strength among strangers. The prudent avoid her threshold. The wise keep to the road that leads home. Explain soberly. The warnings are not mere prudishness. They protect family, honor, and the future. Temptation often begins with small betrayals of covenant, late hours, secret meetings, tongue loosened by flattery, and ends in ruin that spreads beyond the two who transgress. The teaching calls for vigilance in relationships and faithfulness where vows are made. Scene: under the courtyard lamp, a young man passes a house where laughter spills to the street. The voice that calls from within is persuasive, like warm oil. He remembers his father's words and turns his face toward the stars. The night air is cold, but his feet follow the path that leads to the tabernacle of his household. Application: if you are tempted, set boundaries before the hour of testing. Close doors, avoid idle talk, keep company that sharpens rather than seduces. Where vows are sacred, defend them as you would defend your life. Turn now to the discipline of speech. Guard your tongue, for words are the hinges of life. A soft answer turns away wrath, a harsh word kindles strife. The slanderer stirs quarrels, the man of understanding keeps counsel. Pride opens the mouth to folly, humility listens and is wise. Short sayings: death and life are in the power of the tongue. A man of few words gains favor, a talkative one reveals his folly. Truth keeps a clear conscience, lies become a burden. Explain: speech shapes relationships and sets the climate of a home and a city. When you choose honest words, you build a fortress of trust. When you choose gossip or boastful speech, you burn bridges. The proverb calls for slow speech and quick listening. Scene: at the city gate, elders debate a measure for the harvest tax. One man speaks loudly to gain attention and loses respect. Another remains measured, insisting on facts, and his counsel carries weight. The crowd leans toward the calm voice because words seasoned with restraint carry authority. Application: begin a practice this week. Before replying in anger, count to 3. Before sharing news about another, ask if it will build up. Make restraint the habit of your tongue. Hear the voice that counsels the young about labor and sloth. Observe the ant, you sluggard. It has no captain, yet it stores in summer and gathers food at harvest. Those who sleep much will eat poverty. Those who keep an honest hand will hold wealth. Idleness breeds want, diligence secures bread and dignity. Short sayings: 6 things the Lord hates, among them lazy hands and deceitful tongues. The path of the righteous is like the morning light, growing brighter to noon. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. Explain: the world of labor is not merely economic, it is moral formation. Work trains patience, integrity, and trust in God's provision. A life shaped by steady effort resists the seduction of sudden schemes that promise gain without toil. Scene: a woman rises before dawn to grind grain. Her hands are cracked from honest work, but her face is steady. Her children gather at her knees with bread in their palms. Across the field, one who sought easy wealth returns empty-handed and ashamed. Application: choose one steady discipline, a daily hour of work, a plan for saving, a small task completed each day. Let work shape your character more than your comfort. Consider rulers and justice. A king with honest counsel secures the nation. A ruler who takes bribes perverts the cause of the poor. Speak truth to those who govern. Do not offer flattery to win favor, for flatterers will be consumed by their own words. Short sayings: open rebuke is better than hidden love. He who gives a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the cause of the righteous. Good government depends on men and women who fear the Lord and love justice. Explain: the social order depends upon individuals who act with integrity in their stations. Justice is not only for courts, it is enacted in daily dealings, lending without harshness, bargaining without deceit, and defending the weak. Scene: at the gate, a widow pleads her case while a scribe listens. A judge leans toward the wealthy man who offers a hidden gift, but one elder stands and says plainly, "Let the widow be heard." The crowd shifts, justice breathes again. Application: if you hold any influence, use it for the weak. If you lead, choose counselors who will rebuke when error appears. Let your hand lean toward equity. Now return to wisdom and her public call. She stands at crossroads, at the city's highest point, and says, "The one who listens to instruction will dwell in safety and be secure from dread of evil." The summons is urgent. Choose daily to walk with wisdom. She opens her house to those who will sit with her, serve her, and learn, offering true riches that silver cannot buy. Short sayings: hear instruction and be wise. Do not neglect it. Pride leads to ruin. Humility precedes honor. Seek counsel in many advisers. Not all who speak are friends. Explain: wisdom's invitation is not a single event, but a lifelong posture. It means submitting daily inclinations, measuring choices by God's truth, and surrounding oneself with elders who will speak the hard word because they love. Scene: at evening, the city lamp is lit. Men and women gather to hear a teacher expound the law. Some come for show, others to test their wits. One sits with bowed head and opens his heart. His life is altered not by knowledge alone, but by the resolve to act. Application: form a habit. Seek counsel weekly. Read a short proverb each morning, and bring one small decision before an elder or a friend for wise counsel. My son, consider the culmination, the praise of the virtuous woman who rises before dawn, provides for her household, and opens her hand to the needy. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Her mouth speaks wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. The city's worth rests on such lives that live by fear of the Lord and industry of hand. Short sayings: charm is deceptive and beauty fleeting. A woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. Her works bring honor. Her household calls her blessed. Explain: the portrait is no mere domestic ideal. It is the ethical culmination of wisdom, fidelity, industry, speech seasoned with knowledge, and generous hands. Such a life blesses a community and reflects the character of the God whom she serves. Scene: in the cool of the morning she kneads dough. By noon she oversees the weaving. By evening she opens the door to the poor. The children and the husband speak well of her, and the elders praise her wisdom. Application: honor those who serve faithfully. Let your life imitate their steady, sacrificial service. If you are a parent, teach your children diligence and reverence. If you are without household, practice generosity and integrity where you are planted. A final urgent appeal: The choice stands before you like two roads. One is lit by wisdom's lamp, the other winds into darkness. Choose the path that leans on God, restrains the tongue, honors covenant, and loves honest labor. Let your life be a pattern. Listen to the Father's voice, heed wisdom's call, and guard your steps. Practical steps to begin today. Memorize one proverb each week and put it into practice. Speak one truth instead of a rumor. Refuse one temptation that would harm your household. Seek counsel for one difficult choice. These small disciplines will build a life of steadiness. If these words have roused you, remain with them. Apply one step this week and return to learn another. Share this teaching with one neighbor who needs counsel. Subscribe and mark that you walked this way so others may follow. Continue to seek the Lord and hold fast to wisdom, for she will be your life and a crown of glory to those who find her. Hear now another charge. Guard thy tongue, for words are like arrows. Once loosed, they wound and cannot be gathered back. He that rules his speech keeps many days, but he that is quick to anger stirs strife without cause. Short sayings. A soft answer turns away wrath. The proud man multiplies quarrels. He who hastens to speak will know shame. He who refrains from contention will be counted wise. Explain. Speech is the instrument by which hearts are moved. To speak without thought is to leave a trail of ruin. To be slow of tongue is to build bridges where others burn them. Remember that praise heals and rebuke corrects only when given in love. Slander destroys. Let your lips be a shelter for truth, and your mouth a well of mercy. Scene. In the market, a merchant and a buyer argue over the measure. Words fly like sparks. A neighbor steps between them and lays a hand on the merchant's arm, saying softly, "Set the scales right, and be content with a fair gain." The buyer's anger cools. A bargain is made in peace. The bystanders speak afterward of how a few tempered words halted a quarrel and kept the day honest. Application. Before you speak in anger, wait. Count 10 breaths and then answer. Practice a daily restraint. When offended, say nothing for an hour, and consider the matter with an elder or a trusted friend. Let truth be spoken plainly, not in fragments that feed rumor. Attend also to the deceitful witness and the smooth bribe. Justice falters where money speaks, and the lonely and poor are trodden underfoot when the ear favors the rich. Short sayings. He who takes a bribe minds nothing but gain. A righteous cause will stand when judges fear the Lord. Better a poor but honest man than a rich deceiver. Explain. Corruption unmans a people. It takes the place of law with fear, and once it reigns, piety is but a cloak. Uphold the rights of the widow and the orphan. Let the measure be true and the scales balanced. If thou art in authority, set watchers over thy servants and choose counsel that will not be bought. Scene. At the gate, a poor man shows the mark of his wounds and cries for justice. A scribe who sits there smiles to a wealthy petitioner who slips a coin into his palm. But one servant of the council, noting the bribe, rises and speaks before all. Shall your hands turn aside the right of the afflicted? The Lord will call us to account. There is shame in the merchant's face. The appeal is considered, and the poor man is heard. Application. If you hold office, make known that rewards shall not guide judgment. Train those under you in simple honesty. Pay wages at the appointed time. Weigh without deceit. Keep the covenant of trade as sacred. Beware the path of the adulterous one and the seducer of hearts. Lust slays the season of honor. It steals the bloom of trust and brings reproach upon the house. Short sayings. The feet of the adulterer stray to destruction. The man who follows the belly shall find the city full of shame. Keep thy door barred against fleeting desire. Explain. The siren of sin is cunning. She will dress ruin as delight and call darkness light.
Stay not long where temptation waits. Keep covenant with thy spouse. Let love be faithful, and speech of the bed be without deceit. If thou art single, walk in purity, and keep covenant with God. For to cleave unto him is to find strength against temptation. Scene: at dusk, a young man lingers by the city wall, and is beset by a woman who flatters his ear and loosens his resolve. He would have followed her, but his friend, who loves him, takes hold of his cloak and speaks sharply. Remember thy mother's teaching, and the shame that will come upon thy father's house. He turns away. His heart is heavy but whole. Application: if you are tempted, flee the place. Make a covenant with a faithful friend to rebuke you when you stagger. Remove from thy house objects and persons that awaken temptation. Teach your children the boundaries of honor before their hearts are promised elsewhere. Mark too the sluggard, whose fields lie untilled, and whose barn is empty come harvest. Idleness breeds want, and the rod of want humbles the proud. Short sayings: the sluggard says, "There is a lion in the street," and so sleeps on. But the diligent reap in season, and have bread in the time of famine. Explain: industry is a prayer as much as giving. The hand that labors speaks faith in the future. Be diligent in small tasks, for the faithful servant in little will be entrusted in much. Make plans, set hands to work early, and teach the young to value labor. Scene: at the threshing floor, a man rises with the first light, his back bent at the load, his neighbors watching and learning.
The sluggard comes later and finds that the place is bare of grain. He begs for help and hears the wise say, "Had you risen with the dawn, you would have bread." Application: set a season for work and keep it. Begin with one household chore each day. Repair a tool, mend a garment, oversee the store of grain. Teach children the dignity of labor by having them share small tasks and praise their fidelity. Remember also the danger of pride, for pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Humble thyself, and thou shalt be lifted. Short sayings: he who exalts himself shall be humbled. He who is lowly in spirit shall be exalted at the proper time. Counsel sits with the meek, and scorns the proud. Explain: pride blinds the heart to correction, and surrounds a man with flatterers who echo his folly. Seek men who will speak truth into thy life, and receive rebuke as a healing medicine. When honor comes, give glory to the Lord. Let not the praise of men be thy chief delight. Scene: in the king's hall, flatterers whisper like summer flies about an ivory seat. A counselor, sober of heart, sets before the king a simple truth, and the ruler, though tempted to wrath, listens and speaks. Keep me from hearkening only to those who smooth my ears. The kingdom is steadied for a season, because one voice would not be bought by praise. Application: appoint for thyself one or two who will tell thee the truth, even when it wounds. Consider every compliment as a test. Ask whether the man who praises thee will rebuke thee in secret when needed. Let your store of wisdom be not only for self, but for the next generations. Teach your children in the way of fear of the Lord, that they may not be led astray in their days. Short sayings: train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. The rod and counsel together secure the path of youth. Explain: correction without love breaks the heart. Love without correction leaves the child vain. Balance counsel with discipline. Sit at the child's table and speak of the mighty acts of God. Show by your own life the meaning of truth. Let the sayings of wisdom be woven into daily speech. Scene: in a quiet house, a mother at the spinning wheel tells a story of the Lord's mercy. Her child hears and asks, and in that asking the seed of reverence is planted. At the gate, elders gather the young and tell them tales of old, and so virtue is passed on. Application: read aloud a proverb each evening. Choose one household rule and keep it unbroken for a year.
Pray with your children at dawn. Teach them to give thanks before they take bread. Finally, consider the relation of wealth and heart. Riches gathered by unjust means are fleeting. Riches gained by honest toil may be a blessing or a snare. Let your heart not be bound to silver. Short sayings. Better to dwell in a corner of the roof than with a contentious woman in a wide house.
Wealth obtained hastily will dwindle. He who gathers by hand shall reap a sure foundation. Explain. Money is a servant or a taskmaster according to the heart. Use it for the shelter of the weak, the repair of the poor, and the feeding of the hungry. Beware the love of gain that would rob another. Give alms in secret and do not glory in your gifts. Scene. A father, grown old and with hands weathered by toil, distributes to the poor from his store and blesses his children, saying, "Let not gold be your master. Let your heart be ready to give." They sit and learn the measure of true wealth. Application. Put aside a portion of your gain for the needy. Make an inventory of what you own and ask, "Will these things serve life or take it from me?" Teach your heirs to honor honest earning and the duty of care. Now a final charge from wisdom herself. Fear the Lord and keep his ways. Let not the counsel of wicked men pull you aside, nor the glances of the wanton ensnare your steps. Embrace instruction, love correction, and walk humbly before God. Short sayings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Blessed is the man who hears these words and keeps them. His house shall be a place of refuge. Explain. All the precepts hitherto spoken are but branches of one root, the reverent fear of the Lord. From that root springs understanding, restraint, justice, and mercy. Make it your first quest in the morning and your last thought at night. Scene. At the city's highest point, as dawn breaks and the lamps are quenched, wisdom again lifts her voice. She calls the wandering and the settled, the weak and the strong. Those who had scoffed in youth stand humbly and say, "We will hearken." Children play at her feet, and elders lean forward to hear. Application. Choose this day to bind wisdom upon your heart. Place a proverb by your door. Speak one true word to a neighbor who needs counsel. Begin a habit of weekly counsel with an elder. Let these small acts, taken often, build a life that others will call blessed. Thus ends this exhortation for the present hour. Let your feet be guided by the words you have heard, and let your house be a place where truth and mercy dwell together. Keep watch over thy heart, for from it spring the issues of life. And it came to pass, when the voice of wisdom ceased, that a hush fell upon the assembly. And men and women lifted up their faces, and their hearts were moved. Some went away pondering, others returned to their homes with the words as a lamp in their hands. The scribe took up his reed and wrote the sayings, that they might not be lost. And the elders set them among the councils, that the young might hear them at the gate. Short sayings. Let not the lip be quick to speak, nor the tongue swift to anger. A man who keeps his mouth keeps himself from much grief. One slow to wrath wins honor. Explain. Speech is like a lamp set upon a stand. If set aright, it gives light to all who sit at table. But if hidden or misused, it breeds confusion. Words once loosed fly as an arrow. They pierce where no physician can heal. Learn to weigh thy thought before thou lettest it go. Let silence be the hedge about thy mind when passion seeks the breach. Scene. At the market, a dispute arose between two merchants over a measure of barley. The one who had been swift to accuse found himself shamed when witnesses gave evidence. The other, who held his tongue and sought counsel, restored peace by a simple plea for truth. Men murmured, "Better a word of restraint than a day of contention." Application. Beware the tongue in anger. When thou art provoked, retire and count thy breaths. Seek an elder and speak thy grievance in measured words. Make a rule in thy house. Speak twice about what matters and never thrice in wrath.
If thou hast wounded with speech, go and make it right before the sun go down. Short sayings. A gentle answer breaks the yoke of strife. Harsh words kindle the fire of discord. The lips of the prudent are sought for counsel. The tongue of the foolish is a stumbling block. Explain. A gentle word opens doors that force would close, and the patient ear learns what the hasty miss. Let thy counsel be seasoned with patience, that men may receive it as bread and not as bitter herbs. Guard thy speech, for by it thou shalt either bind or loose the hearts of men. Then wisdom turned her face toward rulers and said, Hearken, ye that sit upon seats of judgment. Let justice be your first garment, and pity your companion. Count not flattery as counsel, nor let the praises of the many steer thee from the straight path. Short sayings. A king who listens to honest words will lengthen his days upon the throne. If a ruler gathers only the voices that clap his hand, his house shall be built upon sand. Explain. A ruler needs pillars of truth. One or two faithful friends are worth many satellites that circle for favor. Set in thy court men who will say to thee, Thou art in error, as readily as they say, Thou art wise. For a voice that will wound in secret is a physician to the nation. A voice that flatters in public is a plague. Scene. There was a king whose ear was full of applause. When famine came, the counselors who feared loss of favor bowed and kept silent. The king, left without true counsel, sent forth edicts that fed waste and starved justice. But when a humble captain rose and spoke boldly, truth returned like rain to a parched field, and the people were sustained. Application. If thou art placed over others, appoint for thyself a friend who will rebuke with love. Make a law in thy house that no decree shall be issued until 3, chosen for their fear of God, have given assent. Seek not the applause of the crowd, but the counsel of the wise. Short sayings. Counsel inherited is better than counsel purchased.
A nation that honors truth builds a fortress no siege can topple. Explain. Wealth and war may test a land, but sound counsel and the fear of God sustain it through seasons of famine and plenty alike. Teach those who follow thee to prize the truth above gain. Let the training of youth be toward justice, that a righteous generation may sit in the gates. Then wisdom spoke of the poor and the stranger, and her voice was like wind stirring the reeds by the river. She said, Remember the widow at thy door, the orphan in the lane, the stranger who dwells among you. Let not thy heart be shut as a stone when the needy come to thee in their hour. Short sayings. He who shuts his bowels of compassion will reap but ashes. The hand that opens to the poor makes the house glad. Explain. Mercy shown in secret is a light that warms even the deepest night. Alms given for praise are as a lamp snuffed at noon. Give in humility, that thy gift may be a keeping and not a boasting. Give with prudence, that the needy be not made thralls by thy pity. Scene. A widow, her bowl empty, came at dawn to the storehouse of the town. The keeper, moved by the teachings of wisdom, took a loaf and wrapped it with 2 figs, and sent her away with tears of quiet joy. The children who saw learned to share their bread in the years to come. Application. Let every house set apart a portion for the poor. Teach thy children to place bread in the outer chest for those in need. When thou givest, do so with prayer and with care, that the gift nourish body and soul. Short sayings. Store not thy heart in silver, set thy treasure in deeds. He who gives little in secret shall find much in the day of his need. Explain. The riches of a man are measured not by his barns, but by the breadth of his mercy. Use thy gain to shelter the weak, to heal the broken, and to teach those who will stand after thee. For such store is not easily taken. Then wisdom turned to the path of desires and warned concerning the counsel of lust. She said, Guard thy eyes and thy feet. Do not run on the path where wantonness summons. A glance that feeds desire kindles fires that long endure. Short sayings. A man who walks with the wanton walks upon thorns. Keep thy door bolted. Guard the threshold of thy heart. Explain. Desire is a fierce guest who spends a household and leaves cold ashes. Make fences about thy day. Go not where thy foot stumbles. Sleep not where temptation breathes. If thou art tempted, call to mind those whom thou lovest, and the judgment that follows folly. Scene. In a city, a youth lingered near the house of a woman fair to look upon, and many nights he tarried. He lost his standing, his wits, and at length his health. But one who feared God among his kinsmen took him, spoke plainly, and set him to work, and slowly he rose again. Application. If thou art beset by desire, make for thyself a companion in truth, who will hold thee to account. Rise early and fill thy day with worthy tasks.
When the hour comes that steals men, flee it as thou wouldst flee a burning house. Short sayings. A pure life is a shelter against shame. Haste to sin brings long regret. Explain. Discipline of the flesh is not hatred of delight, but the training of desire to a higher end. Order thy days. Let prayer and labor fill the hours, and thou shalt find that lust loses its power. And there came a voice from among the people asking, What of the old man whose lamp grows dim? Shall he be left to the road in his age? Wisdom answered and said, Honor the aged, for they are the fathers of thy days. Hear their counsel, and care for their hands that have labored for thee. Short sayings. A house that honors its elders shall not be ashamed. The gray head is a crown of glory when kept with love. Explain. The aged store within them harvests of memory and counsel. To cast them forth is to cut off the roots of the tree. Let the young bring food to the table. Let the old sit and teach what they know. In their weakness be thou strong. In their silence bring comfort. Scene. In a courtyard, a son tended his father's feet and listened. The father told of seasons of drought and of days of plenty, of bargains struck and of promises broken. The son wrote the words and kept them. Later, when famine came, the counsel of the aged guided the household to store and to share. Application. Set a day of hearing with the elders of thy kin. Keep a place at thy table for the gray-headed. When they speak, give heed. Let their sayings be recorded for thy children's children. Thus wisdom multiplied her counsel, and each saying fell like seed into the willing soil. Some took root quickly, others lay dormant until the right rain stirred them. The teachers rose and appointed times of learning, and the people set aside corners of their houses for quiet instruction. Short sayings. Habit formed in youth shines in age. The house that hears wisdom is a fortress in the day of trouble. Explain. Small acts done often become the manner of life. To read a proverb each evening is better than to hear 1,000 words at random. Bind counsel to the simple acts of day, and the heart will keep it as a treasure. Scene. At twilight, fathers and mothers called their children and spoke a single proverb. And when the moon rose, many children dreamt of the wise woman who had spoken that day. In the morning they rose with a new thought, and thereafter their steps were guided. Application. Choose one precept to practice for a month. Teach it by naming it at morning and evening. Let it be as a cord about thy wrist until it becomes as natural as breath. And when all had heard, wisdom lifted her hands and said, Walk humbly, do justice, love mercy. Let not pride lift thee, neither let sloth bow thee down. Keep thy life in the fear of the Lord, and thy days shall find order. Short sayings. Humility steadies the heart, pride breaks it. He who fears the Lord walks safely in the midst of snares. Explain. The fear of the Lord is not a trembling before men, but a steadying before God. It sets all other virtues in their place and bars the way to ruin. Begin each day with it, and end each night counting its mercies. Scene. The city resounded not with shouting, but with measured living. Men rose early, fed their households, kept watch over the poor, and sat at the gates to give counsel to the wayfarer. Women wove truth into the cloth that they spun, and the songs the children sang were of mercy and of right. Application. Let the first thought of the morning be a prayer. Lord, teach me thy way this day. Let the last be thanks for one mercy. Practice one act of justice and one act of mercy each week, and make thy portion with those who keep the covenant. And the people rejoiced, for wisdom had not merely spoken, but had given them ways to keep her words. They divided the sayings among their households, and set corners in the city where the young might sit with elders and learn. Thus order grew, and with it a quiet peace. But know this: temptation and sloth wait ever at the edge of the common ways. Therefore be watchful. Keep thy lamp trimmed and thy heart attentive. Let no one think that hearing alone saves a man. It is the doing that brings blessing. Short sayings. Hearing without doing is like the seed on stony ground. A word performed is a word confirmed. Explain. If the man keeps law in words but not in deed, he is like a tree showing leaves in spring and bearing no fruit in harvest. Let action follow instruction. Let practice crown knowledge. Scene. A house that had once been proud and wasteful took to keeping one rule: no coin spent in pleasure until the needs of the neighbor were met. Slowly, their wealth became a blessing rather than a burden. Neighbors were fed, and the laughter in the lanes returned. Application. Let each man make one rule that makes his household a blessing to others. Keep it for a year. Test it and adjust, but do not abandon it before the harvest. And again wisdom spoke, a portion for those who govern the tongue of the heart, the thoughts that men hide even from themselves. She said, Take heed to the counsels thou allowest thyself, for the mind follows the likeness of the voice that speaks within. Short sayings. Guard the inner talk, it shapes the outer deed. Sow truth in thy heart, and truth shall grow. Explain. If thou keepest company with wrath in thine heart, wrath shall be seen in thy hand. If thou nurse affection and forgiveness, then patience and mercy shall follow. Be as a gardener. Weed thy thoughts, plant good seeds, and water them with prayer. Scene. A young man who had nourished envy found his days dark with quarrels. He sought a teacher, and learned each morning to name 3 gifts for which he thanked. In time, envy grew thin, and his hands were free to build rather than to break. Application. Begin each day giving thanks for 3 true things. If bitterness rises, tell it aloud to one who loves thee, and ask for counsel. Keep a scroll of things thou wouldst change, and act upon one small thing each month. Thus the words of wisdom were set before the people as a way, a pathway of many steps. Some walked swiftly, and some slowly. Some stumbled and were helped up. Some turned back and were called again. But the counsel remained, a treasure to be opened at need. And now, in the fullness of the day, when the lamps were brought forth and the stars took their posts, those who had labored to gather the sayings bound them in a scroll and placed it in the house of learning. Men and women who desired to walk in the way came and read, and they would speak oft of the mercy that had come to them through the simple injunctions of wisdom. Short sayings. A book of wisdom is a friend that never leaves. Pass it on to those who will keep it. Explain. If thou hast found favor in these words, deliver them to one who thirsts. Teach a neighbor, a child, a friend. For wisdom grows not by being kept, but by being shared. Scene. A teacher opened the scroll to a circle of youths and read aloud the charge. Fear the Lord and keep his ways. The youths took up the charge and, in the years to come, were known in the city as keepers of truth. Application. Choose one man or woman to whom thou shalt teach these sayings. Meet weekly, read, practice, and pray. Thus shall the counsel be preserved and multiplied. And now the night deepened, and the counsel dispersed. Yet the words remained like embers that may be kindled again. Some slept in peace, others rose to watch. In the morning new tasks would call, and the cycle of keeping would begin anew. And it came to pass with the rising of the sun that the city thronged to its work, and yet the house of learning received many who came with burdens upon their hearts. A woman named Tirzah came early, her veil drawn, bearing a small bundle of cloth and a tear that would not be hidden. She stood at the door and called for the keeper of the scroll. The keeper came forth, and seeing her distress, bade the elders gather. There was in the city a dispute between Tirzah and one Josiah the potter. Josiah, who had lent seed and copper to a neighbor in harvest past, now claimed a pledge from Tirzah's son, saying he had taken a measure of grain in the night. Tirzah denied it. Her son was a quiet lad, yet the potter's anger swelled, and his neighbors whispered. The matter might have hardened into feud, had not the keeper brought the scroll and opened it before them all. Short sayings. Let law be weighed with mercy. Let mercy bow not to falsehood. Explain. The one who seeks justice must not be blind to pity, yet pity must not be a cloak for wrong. The scales of town are two-handed. One hand holds reproof, the other holds help. To pervert either is to make law a sword or a yoke. Scene. The elders sat in a ring at the gate, as was their custom, and each looked upon the youth and upon the potter. Some were of the seed of quick judgment, calling for oath and recompense. Others were of slower heart, desiring proof and care for the mother who had lost a husband in war. A young scribe, who loved strict measure, began to speak, but the eldest among them raised his palm and read a portion of the sayings concerning neighborliness and the tender handling of the young. Then Tirzah spoke. Her voice was low but clear. She told of nights when her son sat by the loom and mended a cloak for a traveler. She told of the boy's silence and his love for the father who was gone. The potter answered with heat, describing the vanished measure and the hollow granary. Men muttered and looked one upon another, remembering times when such disputes had turned to blows. Short sayings. A witness for anger is easier to find than a witness for truth. Explain. Men will gather to the cry that stirs the blood, yet truth is oft a small thing found in silence. Therefore seek the quiet witness, the footprint, the broken tile, the hand that works at night. Let the city not be governed by shouts, but by the signs the earth yields. Scene. The elders sent two among the youths to search the lane where the potter's house looked upon the common store. They returned with a small scrap of cloth tucked beneath the threshold, thread that matched a torn corner of Tirzah's bundle. The potter's brow darkened, for he remembered that his gate had been mended that very night by the lad who passed with a lamp. Yet there was also a dint in the store's door, as if a measure had been forced, and the scale plate bore a streak of clay like that from the potter's wheel. Application. When law and mercy conflict in a house, measure both by the marks left upon the place. If the child has mended and given comfort, weigh his service. If the potter shows his goods damaged, repair him likewise. Seek settlement that returns the fragment and binds the wound. Thus the elders judged. They required the potter to show the measure and to set his claim in presence of two sworn neighbors. If the evidence favored him, Tirzah's house should make recompense from what the people called the common grain, a portion set aside for such needs. If the measure could not be found, then the potter was to forgive the debt and take a labor in kind for his neighbors until the sum was repaid. Both were to bind themselves by an oath taken at the gate, and both were to be given counsel for peace.
Short sayings. An oath taken in anger rends the oath. An oath spoken in sorrow binds the heart. Explain. Oaths are not chains but promises to honor the day. When an oath is given with wrath, it is brittle. When given with contrition, it binds both to repair what damage was done. Scene. Josiah the potter stood and looked upon the mother and the boy. A measure of silence passed, as if the city itself held its breath.
The potter's shoulders, long used to the wheel and its steady turning, hunched as he thought of the long winter to come and of the neighbors who had once given him seed. He took a breath and said, "If the measure be not found, I will take the labor, and I will teach the lad the wheel. Let him learn to mend my pots, and when his hands grow steady, we shall reckon." There was a stirring among the people. The boy, whose name was Melech, bowed his head. Tirza's eyes were bright with gratitude and shame both. She rose and brought forth a loaf and a cup and set them before the potter, saying, "Take this for a time, and forgive us what we owe if the proof shall fail." The potter, who had thought his heart sealed and hardened, let his hand fall upon the lad's shoulder, and the harshness in his voice melted to something like tenderness. Application. In the governance of a town, contrive ways for judgment to be a schooling rather than a punishment. Bind the offender to learning and to repair. Let the community bear witness, not only to guilt, but to restoration. After the matter was settled, the keeper of the scroll rose and spoke to the assembly about the nature of rules made for the household. He said, "Let governance be not only the making of decrees, but the crafting of men. If the town make laws that crush the poor, it has built walls against itself. If the town fashion laws that teach skill and bind hands to honest labor, it has made a net to catch the falling." Short sayings. Laws that bind men to better hands are nets for mercy. Explain. A law that only punishes leaves hurt in its wake. A law that requires repair and instruction heals the break and strengthens the weave of the city. Scene. Men and women left the gate with their tasks. Tirza and Melech went home to mend what must be mended, and Josiah returned to his wheel with new patience. The house of learning was fuller by one tale to be told by hearth and by threshold, a tale that would teach children how a community may temper strictness with kindness. Application. Let every council make at least one rule that binds punishment to restitution and learning. Test it in times of peace. It will be of value in times of fracture. And the keeper placed the new judgment beside the old sayings in the scroll, that those who would learn might find there both measure and mercy. The city moved through the day, and the embers in many hearts were fanned anew by deeds more than by words.